All right, welcome to Red Planet Muay Thai. This is our jab tutorial. I was watching a video on Instagram on the jab. It was done by a major franchise gym, and I just didn't like the tutorial because I'm very, very picky about things. And that could be just my nature, the way I am, but I like things to be very specific. And so I took that as an opportunity to analyze the jab and kind of break the jab down to you as far as like correct footwork, the mechanics of the jab, range and distance understanding, so that when we watch these videos, we can be a little bit more critical, and when we're performing our jab, we have a really good sense of the purpose of the jab, which varies because the jab in boxing and the jab in Muay Thai are slightly different because of the kicking element. So we want to take that into consideration. But everything that I will show you today is something that you can use in boxing or Muay Thai or kickboxing. These will all be very kind of like general guidelines. And I use the word guidelines because there's no rules in fighting. Whatever works, that's what you use. These are my opinions on the jab. I love to jab. I've been successful with the jab. So I'm going to share them with you. And we'll start with our stance, okay? So regardless of whether you have a more boxery style stance or a more Muay Thai stance, what you want to focus on is you want to focus on understanding first where your target is. Are you in the pocket or are you not in the pocket for your jab to land? Okay? So that will dictate if you use footwork or not. And that's really the basis of why I'm doing this. Because if you're in the pocket, you don't need to move your feet at all to jab. So understanding the mechanics of the jab without footwork is really critical, okay? If I am here, and I'm gonna be jabbing with my left, okay? If I am here and my opponent is reachable without me moving to cover distance, then it's very important that you do not move your front leg, okay? If I'm here, jab. You see that I turn my body a little bit. By turning my body, I have to be careful in Muay Thai because I will expose my leg a little bit by turning my knee in a little bit, which will make it slower for me to respond to a check, okay? So one, being aware of that. Turning my body gives me a little bit more length, okay? So it's really critical to understand, first of all, distance. Distance is very important because I can jab straight out, no body mechanic at all, and that will land the punch right where it is. Or I can turn my body and add an extra couple of inches without moving my feet. I only pick up a little bit, you'll see it on the bottom foot over here, right? But there's no movement forward or backwards, and that's what I'm talking about, footwork. The reason why is because I'm very critical, because I see a lot of people when they jab in the pocket, let's say they're in front of the bag already, they can reach, and because there's nowhere to go, they do this. And it's very silly. This is not professional movement. This is not professional. This is not a good jab. This is going to telegraph your jab. It's going to trigger my defensive response, okay? And it does nothing, okay? If you're going to add power and you're in the pocket, you torque your hip. You can even lean over a little bit by bucking your knee forward, boom, and extending a little bit without me having to move my foot, right? And that is very critical because that will give you the initiation without tell, right? Boom, right? Gives me a little bit of extra length, but it went straight out from where my hands were. My hands are here, boom, they go straight out. I only go so far. I don't want my head to really go over my knee too much. Some really talented fighters can get away with that, like Muhammad Ali, for instance, that used to lean over a little bit on his jab, so like I said, guidelines, right? But overall, we want to keep our balance, especially in Muay Thai. So, when you're in the pocket, practice not moving that base foot, okay? There is no need to move it if you're in the pocket. If you're not in the pocket, if you need an extra 2 or 3 inches past that maximum line where you can turn and lean over a little bit and extend, and you can't reach because you're just shy, then you move your foot. There are 2 ways to move the front foot. The first way is by moving only the front foot in Muay Thai. Very popular move here. Boom. Okay? Boom. Okay? This is just leading in with the jab and stepping back out. This is to put you in the pocket for the jab so that it lands and then return you to a balance where you can respond with a defense. Okay? Or you can move both feet. This is if you are particularly fighting a backstepper, somebody that likes to move a lot around you, and you need to cover ground. Boom. Now both my feet moved. Okay, this is a shuffle step forward, shuffle step backward, shuffle step forward, shuffle step backward, shuffle step forward with a jab. Okay, that covers distance. That is when you move your foot. You move your feet when you are changing position. If you are changing position, the foot moves. I can move laterally. If I am here and I'm jabbing sideways, jab, 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 jab. Okay? My feet move at the same time that my jab comes out, and I move laterally because I am changing position as I am punching. If I am not changing position, pop, my feet do not move. They do not need to move for anything. You do not need to do this, right? This is a really bad habit. If you're in the pocket, you need to know this already. A lot of people just because they just can't help it, right? And this is one of the things that you really want to work on. To have a good jab is to know when to do what so that you can remove all of your tells, because any excess movement will always give you away with a more experienced fighter. So you want to remove those tells. So practice when you're here. If you're like on a bag or something like that, you're here, right? Practice. Plant that foot. Do not move it no matter what. Pop, 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 right? Different angles, different positions. Lean over a little bit, pop, lean over here, pop, right? So you want to be able to throw that jab from anywhere without moving that foot, because if you don't need to, don't do it. It will give you away, okay? Another thing we can do is we can practice the jab on a double end bag. Double end bags are a very good tool for practicing your jabs, okay? So I'm gonna come back, we're gonna set up the double end bag and make a demonstration. So now we are here with the double end bag. The double end bag is a really good tool to help you kind of loosen up your jab. Especially what I experience with a lot of Muay Thai fighters is that they tend to be very stiff punchers, right? Whereas boxers tend to be a little bit looser with the arms. And so the combination of the two works really well for some people. For some people, the traditional Muay Thai is more what they're looking for. Me, I like to have very loose, punchy fighters. I'm a very loose-handed fighter myself. I like to flick my arms out. I look for combinations. So you need to have a good jab understanding to have good punching skills in Muay Thai. And if you're boxing, well, if you're boxing, you need to have a good jab, you know? So, working with the jab, you know, you're in your stance here, you hand your hands up. So, as we were talking about before, just like I showed you before as well, the foot, practicing the jab without the foot movement, right? This is also really good to teach you distance. When do you move, when do you not move? If you practice constantly hitting something that's in the pocket without moving, boom, right there I hit it. Didn't move my foot at all, okay, trust me. You get used to knowing when you're in that space where you don't need to flick your foot, right? So it's good to use a double end bag to practice it, because you can jab all day long on it and it has a good return. It helps you build your timing up, your speed. You're here, okay, I'm moving my body. You see that I have naturally go into training mode, my head starts to move because it's part of my style of fighting, okay? So I'm here, okay, and I jab, pop, okay? You see I move back and forth. I never moved my foot. None of my feet moved in that position, just so you know, okay? I can't film the whole thing, unfortunately, but take my word for it. My feet are not moving, right? Pop, pop, okay? Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I'm shifting my angles, my body weight, without moving my feet to draw the eyes in one direction, and then I flick my jab out from where they're not looking at to remove their ability to react to my jab. So the technique that's popular in boxing and with good strikers in Muay Thai, really good punchers, okay? So, but the main core of it is not the strategy of the jab, rather just to demonstrate that even with that movement, my lead foot never moved. It was planted. Does not need to move. You do not need to move your foot, your front foot, to jab for any reason. Just gives it away. So, when do you move? Okay, I move when I am changing distance. Here I am, changing distance. Now I cannot reach, okay? And so you need to know that you can jab when you can't reach, right? Just out of reach. And so now I will slide forward and back. You see, I naturally slide back because my boxing training teaches me to be in and out, right? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? In and out. So you get in there, boom, and then you get back out. So you learn distance. You learn that there is a space where I can hit them that I have to get into, that I need to get out. And the reason why I'm getting out is because I don't want to get hit back. All things being equal, if it's a relatively fair fight, we're going to be within a few inches of arm length, and we're trying to break it down to the inches where I'm going to be as far as offense and defense, right? So when I'm hitting, I'm stepping in a couple of inches to be able to land my punch because I'm out of range, but I'm stepping out X amount of inches, which will depend on the length of my opponent's arm. So if my opponent has longer arms than me, I have to be able to know that the distance that I step in to land is not the same distance that I step away to evade. I must step away a little bit further, even if it's only 2 inches, because he will be able to reach. And I also need to know that he will be able to reach if my opponent steps forward and jabs as I am doing it. Understanding of range, which means that the stepping back might not even be enough if he's fast enough. So boom, boom, I might have to move my head to duck that jab, right? Because the distance was not enough to be clear of the jab. Otherwise, it would just go right there, right in front of my nose, but it wouldn't touch me. Or it may just click, touch, right? Been in many situations like that. In which case you have either cover, you can move your head, whatever your defense style is. That's the basics tutorials to the jab. Range is really important. We also need to cover some other things. Let's cover some more things, actually. Let's cover motion of the arm, okay? So one of the things that I was saying earlier was that many fighters tend to be kind of like very stiff with their punches. Like Frankenstein's, okay? And you need to learn to loosen up. So if you want to land those punches and make them effective, you have to be able to flick them in, cracking like a whip, okay? So in order to understand it, you understand the mechanics. The basic mechanic of the jab is that wherever the hand is, it turns over and starts to rotate in a straight line, aiming with the front 2 knuckles, okay? Minimal rotation of the elbow, okay, as it lands, okay? And why I point out the elbow is because a lot of people tend to lift up the elbow and flare their elbows out to jab, right? So what happens is that it slows your jab down by a hair because you're going up instead of just going directly forward, right? And so a lot of flary elbow punchers like this, they tend to be very telegraphical. You can see them coming from a mile away. They're just a little slower as well. So you want to keep the elbows down, boom, nice and crisp, nice and crisp. You don't want to move that elbow unnecessarily. There's no need for it. It will make it longer for you to defend your ribs as well. So you need to keep the elbows from moving out excessively, right? It's gonna move out a bit because of the nature of anatomy. Some will move out more than others based on their flexibility. I've seen it where somebody can just punch like this and the elbow doesn't even move. And it starts to look weird and you're like, why is that? It's like, well, they're super flexible or hyper flexible. And so then with people like that, I tell them to move their elbow a little bit, because if not, they won't. And then they end up hyperextending their elbow a little bit. So that's the motion, the basic motion. Now, where does the power come from? The power comes from depending on what style of jab you're doing and how far you are away. So if I'm back here and I'm stepping in with my jab, the power comes from my right bottom foot, because the thrusting of the right bottom foot is what drives the punch forward. It is what drives my body forward. My entire body is behind the punch. When I drive from the back foot and my front foot lifts off the ground to move forward, my entire body is going forward. At that point, my drive should be with the body. So I don't want to do things like move and then jab, because that will be slower and weaker. Now, that is movement and then a jab. When I'm stepping in with my jab, boom, I am driving my entire body forward, okay? One of the things you want to try to think about is everything going forward, including your forehead. Your forehead should be going towards the target, and that will keep people that have the habit of lifting their chin up, right? You don't want to lift your chin up. I always tell people, head forward, bang, right? Straight forward, straight in, head forward. Don't want to go up, don't want to go down, straight, boom, because everything is driving forward. And then you return, if it's Muay Thai style, okay, bang, and then you're back here, right? If you're more boxery, boom, and you flip back, okay? Both feet move. You don't want to plant when you're throwing this kind of jab. You only plant if you're assuming that if your opponent is going backwards. If you are pretty confident that your opponent is going to go backwards, then when you bang and then you plant, you stay where you are. However, it's good habit to always boop, unless you're coming in with a combination. You go in and out, boop, in and out, boom, combination, right? Well, that's when you plant, because now you're throwing a combination, and then the footwork for whatever combination you're doing will run its course, okay? That's all I can think about for today. We'll cover the jab more extensively as I figure out or run into problems with students and stuff like that, and it gives me ideas that I can share with you. But really the biggest takeaway from today's tutorial is learning to plant that base foot so that you can just use your arm when you need to jab, because it's not a power punch. It's meant to, you know, I can pop a nose, make it bleed, sure, but I'm not gonna knock somebody out with my jab. That's not the intended purpose. It's meant to be quick and fast, and it's meant to cause a little bit of damage over time, and it's meant to set up. If it's threatening, it's a great setup for your combinations, right? Because how do combinations work? They make you worry about one thing, and then many things happen and your defense can't keep up, all right? So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial / discussion on the jab. For all you other coaches out there, feel free to strip it down and use whatever you can from this to help you out. And thank you very much. All right.